Hi everyone, I just wanted to come here and share what has been happening lately. It's a bit lengthy, but I really need to let this out. So, I am 32 years old, and I have a younger sister, let's call her Emily, who is 24. Growing up, our family dynamic was a bit uneven, with my parents blatantly favoring Emily. Honestly, the favoritism didn't just end when we started getting older. If anything, it intensified. This has brought us to a breaking point today. I found myself diving straight into work right after college. I made it a priority to save every possible penny, and after years of hard work, I am proud to own a small but flourishing business. My parents, in contrast, haven't been very prudent with their finances. Their lifestyle choices often exceeded their capabilities, leaving them without any substantial savings. Emily, being the baby of the family, always had things differently. She was always in a bubble of comfort, coddled by my parents at every turn. As a child and teen, she was handed almost everything she desired. At the tender age of 16, she received a brand new car as a gift. When it came to her education, my parents paid her college tuition in full, only for her to drop out partway through. And of course, she often indulged in frequent shopping sprees. On the flip side, my own journey couldn't have been more different. I worked several part-time jobs to support myself and had to bear the burden of student loans throughout my academic career. Despite all of this, I do not begrudge Emily for the way she was brought up, but it certainly created a divide between us. This disparity between us seems to have only grown wider with each passing year. While my business was my priority, Emily drifted through life on easy street, courtesy of our parents. Now, don't get me wrong, I am more than willing to help out family when needed, like anyone else would. However, the current situation has just crossed the boundaries of what I consider reasonable. Ultimately, this pattern of preferential treatment had laid the foundation for what was to come next. The moment when Emily's wedding became the focal point of my parents' unrealistic fundraising expectations. The disparity between our experiences is what set the stage for everything that has unfolded, leaving me at a crossroads that I had never envisioned. Fast forward to the present, and here we are. Emily is set to marry her boyfriend, whom she has been with for 2 years. It was a joyous occasion, as weddings often are, and when Emily broke the news of her engagement, our family was thrilled. My parents, in particular, were over the moon and quickly became engrossed in the excitement, visions of a grand wedding dancing like sugar plum fairies in their minds. With stars in their eyes, they seemed to overlook the stark reality of their financial situation. Once again, they found themselves planning for extravagance without actually having the budget to back it up. The notion of limiting themselves seemed far beyond their scope. Naturally, given the family's history, especially the financial assistance regularly showered upon Emily, it didn't take long before they turned to me for help to fund this monumental celebration. Initially, the requests were small, even somewhat reasonable. Could you help out with the engagement party? Perhaps contribute to Emily's wedding dress fund? Maybe just chip in a bit? It won't be too much, they assured me. I agreed, naively assuming a small part here and there wouldn't be a huge burden. After all, it was for my sister's special day, and I believed that a little financial support could go a long way in making it memorable. However, these small contributions soon escalated into larger demands. The venue down payment needs handling, they mentioned casually, as if dropping such a responsibility into my lap was not a major imposition. Oh, and there's the caterer's hefty bill, on which we could use some assistance, they added with the air of those who considered my participation a given. As the requests mounted, so too did my concern. It was becoming apparent that I was being asked to practically finance the entirety of the wedding. I felt overwhelmed, watching as my own dreams and financial security were placed on the back burner for the sake of fulfilling my parents' and sister's unwarranted expectations. I knew that the time had come to sit down, have a candid conversation, and set boundaries. Meeting with my parents, I explained my situation. My finances, though stable, were by no means endless. I clarified that while I desired to help, I was also responsible for my future and had recurring expenses of my own to consider. Still, my words seemed to fall on deaf ears, as the old refrain of family duty and obligations echoed back at me as reproach once again. At first it felt manageable, just a few small things. Can you help out with the engagement party? And could you chip in for the dress? I thought these were simple contributions a helpful brother could provide, so I said yes, imagining that this was a temporary situation. Yet, with each passing day, the requests multiplied and grew in scale, steadily becoming more burdensome. Soon, it wasn't just about assisting with a few elements of the wedding, but being coaxed into shouldering significant financial responsibilities. The venue deposit is something they were having real trouble with, they informed me. The casual nature of the request belied the magnitude of the financial commitment they were suggesting I undertake. Then came the issue of the catering expenses, which they described as more than they initially budgeted for, expecting factually that I would step in to bridge the gap. As these demands blossomed into a full-blown financial obligation, I found myself awash with anxiety. Not only was I being asked to fix the shortfalls, but I was beginning to feel as if my own aspirations were being sidelined. My life plans and financial health were treated as secondary to facilitating their dream wedding, which appeared to balloon unchecked and heavily reliant on my monetary support. Sensing the heaviness of it all, I decided it was time for a serious discussion with my parents. With all due respect and love, I voiced the truth about my financial stance. Yes, I'm doing fine with my business, but I maintained that such resources weren't an endless pool from which they could endlessly draw. I wanted to help, true, but within my means, and without compromising my future or the economic stability I had worked hard to achieve. However, my expectations of an understanding ear were quickly muted by disappointment, as my parents reiterated the same old mantra, that family always takes precedence, and in Emily's case, it was an absolute priority. My attempt to reason with them, to move beyond the presumption that I was financially responsible for making dreams come true, was ruffled away as if it were an airy distraction, not the real point at all. They reiterated their belief that it was my duty, driving a wedge into my efforts to define reasonable boundaries. It was becoming increasingly clear that regardless of my financial situation, the expectation was unwavering. It was starting to feel like a battle I might not win without conceding my own needs and dreams. The last straw was when they asked me to pay for the honeymoon. I remember sitting there, the weight of disbelief almost overtaking me, as the words sunk in. That was the moment I knew a line had to be drawn, clear and firm, across the sandy expectations they had been building. It was not that I didn't want to help. I had chipped in for various expenses already, hadn't I? It was the audacity of asking for more than they had a right to expect, that pushed me over the edge. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and finally put my foot down with a determination that surprised even me. Enough, I told them, calmly, but with a firmness that brooked no argument. This is as far as I go, I said, my voice barely wavering. It was a tough decision because, at the core, I love my family, and part of me felt like I was letting them down. But another part knew this couldn't go on, not if I was to retain any sense of financial responsibility and personal integrity. My parents were visibly shocked, perhaps not having anticipated such resistance from me. They responded with a flurry of emotions, swinging from disbelief to disappointment, looping back towards subtle aggression cloaked in familial guilt. "How could you?" was a line thrown around, as if I had committed a moral atrocity, rather than taking a stand for my own boundaries. But no matter their reaction, my resolve held steady. I explained to them again that I wasn't an AITA, nor was I the sacrificial lamb meant to fund what was clearly more than just a wedding. It was a spectacle, built on the shaky foundation of presumed familial obligation. Admittedly, the confrontation didn't end like a heartwarming movie moment, with everything neatly resolved and everyone hugging out their differences. No, there were words exchanged that left marks deeper than I cared to admit. But, amid the fallout, I clung to a single thread of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they would come to understand the stance I had taken not from a place of coldness or greed, but from a place of necessary self-preservation and love. A love that didn't translate to an open checkbook, but was genuine nonetheless. In the silence that followed my refusal, I couldn't help but wonder whether standing my ground would eventually lead to understanding or create an irreparable rift. Only time would tell. After the showdown, my parents were anything but pleased. They were clearly furious. The tension was palpable as they accused me of being egotistical and thankless, arguing that family should come before everything else. They couldn't comprehend my standpoint. Instead, they viewed my refusal as a betrayal of the familial code. To them, my decision to say no wasn't just a personal boundary. It was a betrayal, a denial of unconditional support. Emily, unsurprisingly, took sides with them instantly. Our close sibling bond felt stretched, frayed by her curt remarks and emotional jabs. Her indirect confrontations on social media stung more than I cared to admit, painting a very one-sided narrative of our situation. I wanted nothing more than to defend myself publicly, to tell my side of the story and restore my name. But I held back. I understood the emotional turmoil that stems from feeling unsupported on one of the biggest days of your life. As the days passed, my parents made sure to spread their version of the story throughout our extended family network, framing me as the villain, the brother who refused to lift a finger for his sister. The backlash was swift. Calls from annoyed aunts and uncles flooded in, each beginning with an exasperated sigh and a lecture about the importance of familial obligation. Every conversation seemed to spiral into a loop of disappointment over how they expected better from me. Despite the collective disappointment hurled my way, a part of me stood firm in my decision. I still considered whether I might be in the wrong, but deep down, I maintained that my financial independence was not a family dowry ready to be given away without restraint. Was it selfish to imagine my future, to plan for my own aspirations and needs, rather than pouring my resources into a one-day spectacle? I found a small circle of relatives who chose neutrality, calming voices in the storm, who offered support not through harsh judgment, but quiet understanding and a few encouraging words. They reminded me I wasn't wrong for setting limits, for deciding that love wasn't defined solely by monetary contributions. While the fallout was painful, drawing a line in the sand had forced everyone, myself included, to reflect. Family is vital, but it doesn't absolve one of the right to self-preservation, of navigating obligations according to capacity instead of expectations. Ultimately, I was learning that sometimes standing up for what seems selfish can, in truth, be the truest form of self-care.